Hi there, Mr. Biggers here, and we are going to learn Unit 5, Lesson 4, which is marking triangles and proving triangle congruence. So we're going to start here with the warm-up. I want you to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure this information out. So the warm-up says, what additional piece of information do you need to prove the triangles are congruent by side angle side, hypotenuse leg, or side, 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 okay? So for part A, for side, angle, side, right here, we're gonna look at the triangles, and we have, I'm gonna mark the congruent pieces we already have. So I have NL here. Let me go ahead and do a bigger mark. So I have NL is congruent to TR, and we know that because of the tick marks. We also have here that ML, now it's drawing too big. Okay. We also have here that ML is congruent to SR because of the tick mark. So for side angle side congruency, what we would need is that angle NLM is congruent to angle TRS. If we have that, then we can prove them congruent by side angle side. Hypotenuse leg congruence, we are just missing the 90-degree angle. So we could say that angle NML and angle TSR are right angles. Okay? And for side, 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 we are just missing that third congruent side. So we're missing that NM is congruent to TS. If we had that missing piece of information, then we would be able to follow those congruencies here. Okay? So that's what they're looking for. As it stands, the warm-up is not congruent. Okay, the way that it already is. All right, example 1, we have triangles O, B, W, and W, T, Y. They are shown. Mark the image with the given information. So the given information is that segment OW is congruent to segment TW. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that now. OW is congruent to TW, and there's my tick mark. We have also that OB is congruent to TY. So here's OB, here's TY. They are congruent to one another, okay? And then the last thing that we are given is that angle OBW. So OBW is congruent to angle TYW right here, okay? What other parts can be marked on this image? So we were marking the given information here, which is great. But if you look at this image, we do have a pair of vertical angles. So the vertical angles here are going to be OWB is congruent to TWY. So angle OWB is congruent to angle TWY by the vertical angles theorem. So are the two triangles congruent? If yes, which postulate or theorem supports this? So if we want to identify two triangles as congruent, we need to look at the pieces that we have marked congruent, okay? So at the bottom here in yellow, we have a congruent angle, so I'm going to mark them A. And then if we follow the markings along the triangle, I have here the red side is congruent side. If I keep moving, this is a green side, okay? And then if I keep going around the triangle, we have another angle here, okay? So you want to follow the order of the letters here. So we have So this is kind of the order of the letters that we have. We have A, S, S, A. So we need to figure out which one of these makes a congruency. Now we've learned that this does not make a congruency, so it cannot be that. It can also not be the same thing backwards. So what we are going to have to do is actually go the other way. So I have an angle here, I have another angle here, and then I have a side. So these two triangles would be congruent by angle, angle, side. Okay? So if you look here, we have a congruent angle. Then you have another congruent angle. And then if you keep moving, you have a congruent side. Angle, angle, side is a congruency method that works to prove triangles congruent. Okay? So moving on to example 2. This is a part where you should pause the video and try it yourself. I'm going to go ahead and go over it. So if you don't want any spoilers, you can go ahead and watch or pause the video so you can do it and then watch. Okay? So I have segment EQ is congruent to segment EM. I'm going to mark any given information. So EM, EQ. So once we have those, I'm going to put tick marks to mark that they're congruent. We also are given that angle KEQ is congruent to angle KEM. So KEQ and KEM. All right. What other parts can be marked on this image? So I'm looking here, and right in the middle, KE is congruent to itself by the reflexive property. Okay. So are the two triangles congruent? If yes, which postulate or theorem supports this? So once again, we're going to follow the markings around the figure and see what we have. I have a side. I don't have anything this way, so I'm not going to mark it. I don't have an angle or a side. So I'm going to go this way. I have a side, I have an angle, and then I have another side. So since we have it in that order, these are sassy triangles or side, angle, side. Okay? Let's discuss this. So it's given that EQ is congruent to EM. It's also given that the two angles that we marked are congruent. And we found that by the reflexive property, KE is congruent to itself. Okay? Therefore, the two triangles are congruent by side angle side congruency. This is going to prepare us for proofs because we have to give reasonings as to why certain parts or certain pieces are congruent in geometry. So I'm going to move on to the back side here. So we're looking at example 3. It says complete the proof that the two triangles are congruent. They gave us that EG bisects FEG. They also gave us that EF is congruent to EG. So I'm going to mark the given information. Every time you have given information, please mark your figure, okay? So if EH is bisecting the angle FEG, that means FEG is going to be split into two congruent angles, which I have marked here, okay? We also know that EF is congruent to EG, so EF here is congruent to EG here, okay? And then looking at the diagram, you always want to mark anything else that can be marked just based off the diagram. And I know that by the reflexive property, HE is congruent to itself. Okay? So let's fill in the proof with the given word bank. So the first one, it says EH bisects angle FEG. That is a given statement. So we can cross that out of our word bank. We've used it. Okay? The next given information is not on the proof, so we're going to write it in. We were given that EF is congruent to EG. Okay? And then we have that FEH is congruent to GEH by the definition of an angle bisector. So that's exactly what I have marked in yellow. So we are good there. Okay? And then why would segment EH be congruent to segment EH? So it's going to be congruent to itself once again by the reflexive property. So there we go. I can cross out reflexive property. And last but not least, we're going to need one of our 5 ways to prove triangles congruent for our last answer. So we need to figure out which of the ways proves the two triangles congruent. So we're going to zoom in, look at our triangles. We see that we have a congruent side here. I have a congruent angle sandwiched in between another congruent side. So this is side, angle, side congruency. It's sassy triangles. Okay? Your turn. I want you to try this proof. I'm going to go ahead and work it out now, though. So pause the video, see if you can try it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. All right. remember, you always have to mark your given information first. So I have segment WY is congruent to segment XY. So I'm going to mark those two pieces congruent to each other. I also have that segment VY is congruent to segment UY. So I'm going to mark those congruent as well, okay? And any other information you can mark from the diagram, make sure to also do that. So I'm going to zoom in here. Looks like it makes an X. So anytime you see an X in geometry, you know that you have vertical angles. You need to be marking those vertical angles congruent, okay? So now we have everything marked that we can assume from the diagram. Okay, so reasons are always going to ask us why. Why is the statement the way it is? We have to give a reason, okay? So we need to answer, why is segment VY congruent to segment UY? And the answer to that is, it was given information, okay? Easy. Cross that out. All right, we need to then ask, why is angle UYX congruent to angle VYW? Well, UYX and VYW are vertical angles. So that must be the vertical angles theorem. So we're just going to put vertical angles. And last but not least, why are the two triangles congruent? That's when we need to use our congruency methods that we've learned. If we look at these two triangles, I can clearly see that I have an angle in between two congruent sides, which means the only possible congruence it could be is side angle side. All right, so those are your notes. Pause the video at any point to get any of that, and make sure that you have these for your reference. We're gonna get more into proofs as we go through this unit, so make sure you look back at this video if you need